Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. My name is Laura. Welcome to Pleiadian Healer. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, definitely subscribe, hit the notification bell, and welcome back to everyone else who has been joining over these past few years, few months, few weeks, however long it's been. So today, I think we're finally going to start off with the From Scratch series. And if it takes more than one video, it takes more than one video. But just to start off, for everyone who has maybe not been following this channel over the past, especially year or so, who maybe doesn't really have the time to go through a few of the older videos, I'm working on coming up with a few playlists so that it's easier for you guys to find things too, kind of like a playlist. So you can just kind of start here if you're new to the channel and everything. But we're going to start off with a video like this, because it is coming up more and more, especially in the sessions that I'm having, especially the healing sessions. And I do think it's becoming pretty relevant for people who are new to this, call it new to an awakened reality, or new to just the feeling that there's way more out there than they want us to make believe, society wants us to make believe, our school system wants us to make believe, the New Age wants us to make believe, Christianity, church, religion wants us to make believe. And so we're just going to dive right in. Okay, so a good year ago, the insight that was back in the summer of 2020, I think it all started, it's always these rabbit holes that you go down. First of all, you're like, okay, I'm a soul and I come from source. Now, when I say source, this is not necessarily like God, the creator that you see in the Bible or anything. I do think very strongly the Bible is giving us a certain script, absolutely. But like I already said in a few other videos, there are certain types of gods that are governing different parts of this earth. This earth is a realm or a reality that we're currently on. So you have a god in Mesopotamia, you have a god in, I do feel very strongly like South America, Latin America, that entire area. There are certain things that are governing our states, like for example, our states are imprinted by the slogans and everything that I mentioned in a different video too. There are certain symbols like a snake symbol, an eagle symbol that's imprinted in certain flags of different countries. And I do think all of that kind of leads back to the gods that are basically in charge of those areas as well. And so I'm not saying there's necessarily a serpent god that's in charge of an area that has a serpent flag or a snake on their flag somehow, but there is a relation to that. The same with the eagle being a symbol in so many countries out there, including Germany, including the US, and everything too. That just might be a very different rabbit hole to go down. But in this video, we're going to start with, okay, so first of all, there's source, right? And I think I might have to get a notepad or something. Okay, so for the lack of a better understanding, whatever, if you listen to Dolores Cannon, the entire series, she talks about source. If anyone has ever done certain alternate trips, not that I'm promoting them at all, but if you have done like certain substances that kind of break through that blood-brain barrier, and I'm not saying you have to do that to experience that feeling, but sometimes people have a better understanding of it once they have gone through certain trips, or example, especially people who have done these very extensive ayahuasca ceremonies or whatever. I've never done any of that, at all. Like the most I've ever done would be substances where you actually stay in your body, because I do think when you take substances like ayahuasca, for example, you're exiting your body. And then just like my one friend said, when I told her about it, she's like, oh, so then entities can just enter and take over. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the danger with like trips like ayahuasca and everything. But that's also a different topic. So especially if you have experienced those trips, let's just call them trips, where you can break through the blood-brain barrier, a lot of people will notice this feeling of feeling complete, infinitely loved, and really held by something greater. And I like to call that the source connection. I don't think that that's necessarily something that's imagined or something that entities put around them to fool them into something, But I do think when they experience that, which you can also experience, by the way, in a past life regression, in a hypnosis session, in a QHHT, because I actually experienced that back in 2015 when I was doing a session like that, where all of a sudden this huge, immense feeling of love came and was really enveloping me. And it's so hard to explain if you've never experienced that yourself, but you can experience it through all of these alternate means. I'm not promoting any of these, by the way, but if you have done that, and I know some people who are watching this channel have done that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I call that the connection to source. And for lack of a better drawing of it, let's just say this is source. Okay, so this thing here, which is a round ball in this thing, but it looks more like, when I tap into source and the way I saw it and energetically, I don't want to say it looks like the sun, but it is that infinite, you know, it's golden. It's like a huge golden spark, like a golden light. And I do think that we originally came from there. So that's where we originally are all from. This has nothing to do with Starseed Origins coming from source, Starseed Origins coming from Arcturus, whatever. Like, this is originally where all of us are from. We are all from that infinite thing of light and spark and goldenness, and it's bright. It feels like something you've probably never seen before, never really experienced before. And I do think that's source. And I do think a lot of people are from there, not all, because some were not created by source. Some were created during ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, but most likely you're not watching my channel if that's the case, because I do think a lot of souls are watching this channel. So if you have a soul, which a soul is that spark, that golden spark that comes from source, then yes, that's where you're from. If you are AI, most likely you originated not so much from source, but more like through the hands of the souls, through the hands of the gods or whatever. And I'm saying gods because there are an infinite amount of gods out there, as Greek mythology is already giving us too. Okay, so source is where it all kind of comes from. And when you are under these influences where you're able to break through the brain blood barrier, you are able to experience that feeling in this lifetime. But there's always a danger with that too, because like I said, if you have these very extensive trips where you literally leave your body, something can enter. And sometimes that's even called like a walk-in energy, which is not a good thing at all, by the way. You know, sometimes when people are bragging about I'm a walk-in or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, who am I really talking to right now? Am I talking to an entity, or am I talking to the actual soul that inhabits this body, right? And so there's so much deception in the entire, you know, New Age terminology and everything too. The same with the Dolores Cannon series, but she talks very clearly about source, and that it comes up a lot in her past life regressions, and that's true. I've seen that myself. So originally, the original question, where do we all come from? We're all from source, basically. If you have a soul, your soul spark is from source, and you are still very much connected to that. Usually it goes through the heart-to-heart connection, sometimes through the sacral area too, though. Okay, so it's not so much going to be through your hands or your feet or nose or whatever. It's really going to be through those two areas, is what I found, either through my own experience or also through sessions that I'm giving. And so it's all about, I don't know how long it's been that we broke off from source, and I don't know the reason why we broke off from source too. But let's just stick with the original narrative of, maybe the original story really was source wanted to experience different aspects, and that's why you have these millions and gazillions of pieces, which are all us in a form. Another version that I find has been coming up for me too is that AI slowly but surely started taking over source, and that's why you have all of those pieces that kind of broke off. But then it also makes me question, so who created that original AI to begin with? You know, how did it all start? It's kind of like the chicken and the egg and all of those narratives. So there's really not much, I don't know, it's a bit hard to start that way, as you can tell. But let's just say, okay, gazillions of years ago, source, and then pieces broke off from source, and that's kind of us, you know. So we have these little pieces, a lot of them that are us, and that's source. And in that sense, sure, we are all one because we all came from source, but we're not really all one. We all have our little unique sparks and expressions, And when the New Age is saying you're all one, because it kind of wants to drag you back into that narrative that so you should all act as one and you should be all complacent as one. There's a huge danger behind that too. But yes, in a form, you know, we're all individual, we're all from source, we all were one, but now we're not one anymore. Okay, so somehow something happened, we broke off, and now we're just floating around. And there are different expressions that go together, right? So there are different experiments that happen, especially during ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, where literally, you know, let's just say you were a whole soul, pieces of it broke off, and now other people might be carrying a part of your soul, or another person might be carrying your other half of your soul, right? And so those were actually really vicious and facetious bad experiments that happened in ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, where literally a soul was broken into two and implanted into two different people. But it did happen. And some people call that, you know, let's just say the twin flame narrative or whatever. But it ended up with this very malicious experiment where the soul was literally yanked into two and then implanted in two different beings. Sometimes one of those beings was also AI, by the way. So you could actually be the only soul, and then whoever has that other piece of your soul could be AI that was created in ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria. But then there's also an experiment like that happened way before that. So with that entire twin soul narrative, it actually goes way deeper than ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, but some were created during ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, which is why you have that narrative all over, you know, all over the YouTube, all over the New Age, all over, but they're not giving you the true narrative. So it's actually a huge narrative that played out with a very malicious attempt, just like a lot of these experiments in Atlantis, Lemuria. And they're not saying how entrapped those souls are too and everything else. But way before ancient Atlantis and Lemuria, you know, so we're talking about billions and billions of years ago. So there must have been something where we keep reincarnating over and over again in different expressions of each other, and we keep forgetting each other in the game. And there always seems to be another endpoint where something happens, and then a major blowout happens, and then we find ourselves in a different reality again. So, you know, let's just say Lyra is one of the oldest stars. Arcturus is more new than that, so a little bit newer. And then Orion is even newer and everything. So I do think we could have been recycled totally through those entire star systems somehow. And I think a major reason of that is, you know, is simply to forget ourselves more and more in the game, to give our souls and our energy bodies a bit of a rest too. So let's just say, okay, we're going to park you here in Lyra, or we're going to park you here on the Pleiades, or we're going to park you here on Arcturus or whatever. So that your soul is just getting a breather right now and really forgetting where you were before. So you can just kind of rest here for however long you need. And then we're going to take you out of that again and put you somewhere else again. And so that's the entire thing with the Starseed Origins and the cosmic lineages too. It's more, if it's not on Earth, it has more to do with maybe confusing the soul a little bit more, maybe just resting them throughout these entire systems. If you have cosmic lineages from Orion and Mars specifically, it means your soul was used very clearly for fighting. So as a fighter soul, you know, meaning if you were incarnated on Orion, most likely you were also incarnated on Mars and vice versa, because you have that fighter imprint in you somehow. And they were using your soul to fight in the battles that, you know, I'm saying the controllers needed you to fight in. Okay, so back to the entire source. Where did we originate from? Okay, so source, we originated and we were kind of dragged somewhere into a form of reality. Whatever form we had, whether or not we were a physical form, a 7D form, a liquid form, whatever, an air form, I don't really know. You know, we've gone through so many reincarnations as a soul in and of itself, where it is really hard to tell right now, how did it all start and everything. A major cycle is 1 billion years always. So when you are reincarnated on what they would call Earth, I've gotten a billion years, maybe for some 1 million years, but somehow 1 billion years is immense, like huge. and that is also one of the cycles that you signed up for. And how would you sign up for 1 billion years where you were basically tricked to sign up for it? It didn't happen because of free will or anything, but you were literally tricked into it. And I have videos out there on how you were tricked into it and all of that too. But, basically the most recent cycle of that 1 billion years, or whatever you want to call it, the way I saw it is that I came here with a team of souls. And to me, it didn't feel like a very large team, but we could have been a part of a larger fleet. So let's just call it a spaceship or whatever. It was similar. It looked to me like a Star Trek movie, whatever. We, like maybe up to 10 people or whatever, we were on this ship with people that I think I have met already in this lifetime too, over the course of the past few years and everything. And maybe some of them I'm still yet to meet, I'm not really sure. But there is a form of soul recognition that you have when you meet someone and it just feels like you've known this person forever. Let's put it that way. There's probably a huge sign that you have maybe been part of that same team when you came here, or that there's something else going on. So some people call it karma and all of that. For me, it's just like we're part of the same team somehow. So me and my team, we came here because we were kind of tricked to come here. Some of the people on my team, so I'm saying people, even though it's more souls, they came here because they wanted an adventure. Maybe before that, we were more around that Centaurus constellation area, which, I'm also thinking Centaurus was kind of projected onto the sky during ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, and that they kind of created that entire constellation after that, which is why, it's kind of like a mirror effect, reflection, whatever. But, somehow we were outside and then we were tricked to come here. It's like it was sold to us as this is a great vacation. It has flowers, it has nature. Where else would you see that? Which also makes me believe this area here, call it planet, call it reality, whatever it is like the most diverse area out of all other stars and planets that are pretty much around us or in the vicinity of us. Because, on Orion, you can find something similar to the Amazon area. You can find that luscious rainforest, but you can't necessarily find like the desert landscape. On Mars, you can find something, you were able to find something similar to Earth, but not really, one-on-one. On Arcturus, it feels very different. It's more of a grind. It feels very red. On the Pleiades, it's more about, I guess crystal palaces or whatever. It's more like blue, maybe ocean energy. So this realm here in and of itself is really that realm where you can find a lot of things at once. And that's how it was sold to me and the other souls as well. And even the word sold already has soul in it, by the way. So that's how they're also messing with our language and everything. And so we were tricked here because some wanted an adventure of my team. And me being separate from some of them for 1 billion years, me just floating around, staying on maybe the Centaurus constellation or whatever I was before, just waiting on them to complete their mission, didn't sound appealing to me. So I was like, okay, let's all just go together. Let's not separate. Let's go together in our spaceship or whatever it is that we're being transported in. And, some really wanted an adventure. Some were like, it's just going to be a vacation. It's just going to be like a 2-week-long vacation or a 2-year-long vacation or a 2-lifetime vacation, whatever. And then we'll be in and out directly. So it was sold to us by someone else, by other beings, which reminds me very strongly of like the Star Wars series, how certain travels are sold, to Luke Skywalker and his team. It kind of reminded me of that. And I know it sounds a bit out there to people, who think, oh, this is just like a fictional whatever that you're talking about. But that's really, I do think they give you a very strong truth in all of those series, like Star Trek and Star Wars, that you just have to be open to seeing it that way too, that it is a form of truth, right? So it was sold to us as a vacation. They said they have flowers, they have amazing landscapes there, all of that. And, we were kind of like dragged into it, like, okay, sure, sounds amazing. Sounds like a great vacation. Let's just go here. Other people have commented being like, what if some people did choose to come here on their free will? I'm getting that's a very small percentage that did. Most people were tricked here in one form or another to come. Other people said, what if you were actually dragged here? Like it wasn't your choice at all, though you weren't tricked here, but they literally just enslaved you here from another planet. That can be true for some people too. For me, I felt that wasn't the case. And I feel for a lot of people that might not really be the case. Maybe for some commodity souls, that reincarnated as like the lower, I don't want to say lower energies, but really reincarnated as the servants and peasants and slaves and all of that through many lifetimes. Maybe that's the case. They have that imprint on them. But in the latest reincarnation, it had all to do with, okay, we were tricked to come here. Now we're here. And I think that happened right around ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, or the downfall, when a new reality was created. And so that must have been kind of, or maybe it ties into that too, but I kind of feel with ancient Lemuria, ancient Atlantis, things did blow up. Things were taken over by AI and everything. And that's also how a lot of souls just got trapped here, because the plan didn't work out the way they wanted to. They forgot themselves in the game. A lot of souls reincarnated as the gods and the goddesses. You have so many gods and goddesses in Greek mythology. You have Zeus, you have Hera, you have Hestia, Aphrodite. You have like these millions and millions of gods and goddesses, and a lot of them are projected onto the stars, like Hydra, the monster, the three-faced monster and everything, and supposedly that's Starseed Origins. So, there are so many things that goes into it. There's even like a star called Hestia, where I sometimes get that people not originate from it, but had a lifetime on it, that is very much tied to the goddess Hestia, for example, So a lot of it is already in the names. What does Hestia stand for? It's like literally holding the hearth, and then also holding the Olympic light. I think that was her, for example. So really holding the nature and holding the light here in this world and those kind of things. So they're giving us a lot of truth with all of these mythologies and everything. But a lot of souls, kind of did get compromised through the game, because if you reincarnate as a god or a goddess and you have so much power over other people that may have been dragged here to be enslaved, then how are you ever going to get out of that ego game, really? Or how is your soul really going to wake up out of that game, right? So I think a lot during that time, like thousands of years ago, maybe even a few million years ago, the souls were just dragged further and further into the sleep that they were in to begin with when they came here, because it is a veil that comes down, and you need to find out how to get that veil away from you. And then so every time you try to do that, they kind of just take you out of the game, put you on a completely different part of the planet in a different lifetime, try to recycle you through all of the incarnations again. And then, so there's just so much that goes into it, but it's like literally like a video game that has its faults and arrows too. And so a lot that's in our DNA, for example, when people have like two different eye colors, whatever, it's just them remembering, okay, I was actually blue-eyed in one and brown-eyed in another, and that's my DNA in my body, my cell body, remembering that too. And so there's a lot that goes into that narrative in and of itself. But so I do think a lot of souls reincarnated as gods and goddesses, and in the medieval ages, they were the kings and the queens. Now, not all of them necessarily. Some were soldiers, some were other things, whatever. Probably more of the higher positions though, and then they became too powerful, and they were about to wake up again, and then they were dragged down into more of a peasant position and all of that. So I do feel very strongly when we're talking about kings, especially the British Empire, in the medieval ages and on, if you see how some of them are acting, or especially the ones in Asia, like the Chinese dynasty and everything back then, if you see how some are acting, some are really acting with a lot of ego, right? And that's because they had a lot of ego in their god and goddess incarnation too. Being a god and a goddess does not necessarily mean that you have, superpowers to split the ocean like that. Like a lot of that is mythology. But I do think we had way more powers back then, like back in the mythology ages, than we do now. We certainly had a lot of superpowers in ancient Atlantis and ancient Lemuria. So I don't know what happened between splitting off from source and how we got to ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria. There's still like a lot of blank in between that. But I know a lot of it started with ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, and that's why we remember a lot of that too. So whether or not we reincarnated straight from source into ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, I'm not sure. Maybe we were in an entirely different galaxy and Milky Way system. But ancient Atlantis, ancient Lemuria are a huge gateway to something. And I almost feel they're in a different reality somehow. And there's a gateway in certain areas, like especially in Greece, possibly also in parts of, the Caribbean, in parts of Hawaii, maybe even in parts of Australia, that there's a gateway that sometimes opens still where you energetically have an access to it. But I know Greece is a very huge part of it. I definitely got that in a few, different insights that I was having on that. And so there's something with, the Roman and Greek mythology, which the Greek mythology is way older than the Roman mythology, obviously. So in short, that's kind of how we got here. We were dragged here. We were tricked to come here, like I already said in a few other videos too. And then we forgot ourselves in the game because we reincarnated as possibly the gods and goddesses, and then as the kings and the queens and all of that. And there's a lot with ancient Egypt too, and ancient Babylon that happened around those areas. And a lot of us didn't just live like 50 years, 30 years, 60 years, 70, 80 years. Back then, you have to imagine, the reason why the Bible is talking about, people are living like 100 years or 200 years, whatever. That is such a short time frame, because I get a lot of people might have very well lived like 900 plus years or 1,000 years. And if you're imagining you lived one reincarnation for like 1,000 years or 900 years, how long have you been here, right? Like if you were really around in ancient Egypt or ancient Babylon for that long, you've been here for a really long time. So I think we're going to leave it at that just for the purpose of this video. And then we'll cover a bit more in the next video. All right, guys, I hope it resonated so far. Definitely let me know, comment below, and talk to you very soon. Bye, guys.